Hey guys, Patrick from Iron Rock Off-Road here. Today we're going to be talking about Death Wobble. I got a Jeep JL Wrangler here behind me that's got a terrible case of it. So we're going to use our Death Wobble checklist, which you can find on our website in the FAQ section, and we're going to go through the whole thing and get down to the root cause of this thing. So one of the things that we found with Death Wobble is that there's rarely any one cause. There's going to be a multitude of issues that are contributing to the condition. And we kind of break it into about 3 different sections. That first one is going to be our loose parts or anything like that. Any bolts that might not be torqued, ball joints, tie rod ends, wheel bearings, things like that that are just loose and worn out. And we know regardless of the Death Wobble condition, those have to be fixed anyway. That's just proper maintenance. Then we're going to get into the tires. Tires, we need to see how they're wearing, see how they're balanced, check our tire pressures, all things like that. And then kind of final is we're going to go through the alignment. We have to see what our caster looks like, see what our toe looks like, and make sure that this thing is set up all proper. So all that being said, buckle in. It is going to be a little bit of a longer video this time. And if at any point we're covering something that isn't 100% clear, always feel free to call or email us. First things first, we're going to check for anything loose or worn out in the steering. Even though this is a newer JL model, it's only got about 50,000 miles on it, but we're not going to skip any steps by just assuming that things are good. We do want to check them. So we're going to grab a partner and do the steering shimmy check. With one person in the cab, vehicle off, staying in gear. We don't want anything rolling anywhere. We're just going to get to the top of the steering wheel here, and we're going to go from about 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock at a decent rate. Not too fast, not too slow. All right, with my helper in the cab there, moving the steering wheel back and forth, I'm going to creep under the front end here, start getting my eyes and hands on all the moving parts and see if we can't find a problem. Now I'm just going to be moving basically from one side to the next, touching the drag link end, the track bar, tie rod ends on that side, and now moving to the other side. All right, and I think that'll do it. So we've completed our steering shimmy test, and we found 2 items that are cause for concern. We definitely heard, saw, felt play at the drag link end at the pitman arm, and then also on the other side where the track bar mounts to the axle. There was movement there too. But before we go just replacing parts, we're going to continue on down the list so that we get the full list, everything checked, and then from there we can plan our attack. Now as we're making it through our Death Wobble checklist here, we do need to check this steering stabilizer. We've gone ahead and removed this one for inspection. Things we're going to be looking for, making sure there's no leaks, this one's nice and dry, and then we're going to want to exercise it here in and out. We can see this one still has great resistance to it, and as we go from compression to extension, there's no dead spot in that transition, which is very important. This looks to be a very healthy steering stabilizer, so we can eliminate this as a contributing cause. We're ready to move on to the next category, which is going to be our wheels and tires. We're going to want to be checking things like our tire pressures, wear patterns, wheel balance, things like that. With just a first initial glance, I can already kind of tell that this tire's probably been running at a higher than recommended tire pressure for most of its life. As we can see, it's got a very shallow tread in the middle and a little bit deeper on the shoulders. But we're going to get it up on the hoist, tear the wheels and tires off, and figure out what our plan of attack is. We're up on the hoist. Now, it is worth mentioning that this is all driveway, easy stuff to do. This is very simple. We're using a hoist because we have a hoist. So the instrument cluster does tell us that we're sitting at about 39 PSI, which we do feel is high, but we're going to check manually just to be certain. And that's about what I'm coming up with, about 39, 40 PSI. Now, it's worth mentioning as well that oftentimes we hear people are going off of the tire pressure numbers on the side of the tire here, which says 50. Luckily, we're not there. Now, that is not a vehicle-specific number. That is specific to the tire. This tire is going to go on a multitude of different vehicles. So we want to pay more attention to what the vehicle wants. Now we check the placard and the door jamb, and that says about 36 PSI. we still feel like that's a little high because this isn't a factory vehicle. These aren't factory tires anymore. This one happens to be a load range D 37-inch tire. So we're going to bump this down starting to about 30 PSI. There's very rarely would we want to see it higher than that. So that's where we're going to start for tire pressure. Now with the vehicle on the hoist here, we are going to go just a little further on checking for loose parts. A couple of items that don't always show up that great in the steering shimmy test is the wheel bearing, and sometimes a ball joint doesn't always come through. So to check a wheel bearing, we're basically going to put our hands outermost on the tire as you can and just slight movement. And we're going to want to do that pretty much all the way around the tire. Because if we feel just a little bit of looseness here, that could be tie rod end or something like that. But if we're feeling that same play all the way around, very good indication that's going to be the wheel bearing. Now for the ball joint, a couple different ways to do that if we didn't see it in the steering test. If we do more of an up and down lift, which I don't feel anything there. Another method would be as if we were closer to the ground and using a pry bar to lift up. That would be a good test as well. But we're pretty confident ball joints aren't an issue here today. Okay, now with the wheel off, we're going to take a look at the balance on here. Now we don't have a balancing machine here, so we're not going to be able to do a professional check, which is typically recommended, but we can just do a visual on it. The first thing that we're going to see is that it's dynamically balanced versus statically balanced. A static balance is going to be where we see weight just on one plane, usually the inner plane of the wheel here. Now a dynamic is going to be that inner plane, but then also the outer plane. So we do see that. We also see that there's quite a bit of sticky weight on this thing. Not uncommon to see with an oversized aftermarket wheel and tire. So that just might be is what it is. We do also see remnants of old sticky weights. Now that may indicate that we've lost weight along the way, which can heavily contribute to death wobble. However, that might simply mean that the last tire installer didn't clean up when he was done. So for now, this looks okay. Another diagnostic function we can do while doing all of this is a tire rotation. Now, we're not necessarily doing this for tire wear or tire longevity or anything like that. We're simply just kind of comparing the front tires where we know we have issues with the front end versus the rear tires. And we are seeing that the rear tires have a little bit better wear to them, a little bit more even. And we did peek inside. They have a little less weight on them. So we're hoping to see a change in the behavior of the death wobble by doing a rotate. And we're on to our third category, alignment. So with the help of our alignment tools, which you can find on our website, the first thing we're going to check is our toe. And we're just grabbing the final measurement here off the front of our alignment tool here. It does show that we're about a 1/16 of an inch toed in, which is right around 1.6 degrees. That's typically where we want things, though we do know a little bit higher toe in can contribute to death wobble. So for now, we're just going to jot it down on our list and keep moving on. And now on to caster. We're going to do kind of a quick and dirty on this. We do have a couple other videos on YouTube that give you a little better thorough measurement process to get an accurate caster reading. We're not trying to get down to the decimal points and everything. We're just trying to see within a degree anyway of where we're sitting. So today I'm going to be using a digital angle finder. You can find an analog angle finder on our website. Even a lot of phones have a factory app that has an angle finder function. Again, we're not trying to duplicate the big laser machines at the shop. We're just trying to get a close reading here. So I'm going to creep under here again, and I'm going to be placing this angle finder on the bottom of the C on the axle, the flattest portion under there, and we're going to see what we come up with here. So I did go ahead and zero this to the ground. That is important that we know what zero is. And when I place it on the bottom of the C here, and that's what I'm trying to line the tool up, because if you twist the tool, that can alter the reading as well. So we're going to grab our reading here and see where we're sitting. So our digital angle finder gave us a reading about 7 degrees of positive caster. Online resources are telling us that this particular model wants to see about 4.5 degrees. So we're going to jot down our findings on our death wobble checklist, and come back to this when we're ready to revisit all of our adjustments. So we've made it through the Death Wobble checklist. We've made all of our notes of all of our findings, and now we're ready to get after it and make some fixes. Now, what we would typically do, even though we know that there are some parts that are probably due to be replaced, like the drag link and like the track bar, things like that, we also kind of want to start with the free driveway stuff, right? We can change our tire pressures for free. We can change our toe setting for free. And we can do all these things for free while we're making these checks before we put it all together. Now, when we do that, we're not 100% expecting that the Death Wobble's gone by making all these small things, because we do know that we've got some subpar parts in there, but we can at very least put it back together, take it for another test drive, and see if the conditions changed, or maybe it did go away, or maybe we bought ourselves a little bit more time. But that's what we're going to do here. We're going to do the free stuff first and see what happens. All right, now before we start making all of our adjustments, we do want to pause, and we want to review the sheet that we've been working on through this entire process to go through and make sure we understand what all needs to be addressed. So if we take a look at our first section, our loose and worn out parts, we did note that we had a track bar that was out and a drag link that needed attention. Moving forward, we checked our ball joints, we checked our wheel bearings, we checked our control arm bushings. All of that was good. Getting into the steering stabilizer inspection, that was good. Moving on to our tires, we did note that we were running about 40 PSI on all the tires, which is higher than we'd like to see. We're going to adjust that down to about 30. Then as we move on, we did see that we did have some irregular tire wear on the front tires. We didn't notice any cracking. They look healthy in that regard. We did notice that the front wheels did have what seemed to be excessive weight, at least compared to the rear. Date codes look good, but between the weight to the front and the irregular wear pattern of the front, we do want to do that rotate just to see how that affects the behavior. After that, we can go to the alignment. We did note that we had about a caster reading of about 7 degrees. We're going to adjust that down to about 4. And lastly, our toe setting, our before reading was at 0.16 degrees. We're going to set that to dead ahead for this purpose. Now, as we've gone through the sheet, this is a really good illustration of how many things can contribute to Death Wobble. Not any one of these things seem to be a standalone cause, but all of them combined can create this condition. So we're going to address all of them and see where that takes us. We're going to get after the toe now. Now this is super easy. Don't be overwhelmed. All we have to do is loosen up this bolt here, this nut and bolt, and rotate this double adjuster until we get to the measurement we want to see on the tape here. So we're back from the test drive after making all those free adjustments. The condition did improve, so we know we're on the right track, but it is still present. So we're going to go back to that list, take a look at those parts that we found that were a little suspect during the inspection, and we're going to replace them. Knowing that we were looking at replacing the tie rod, the drag link, and the track bar, the customer decided to upgrade to our 1-ton steering kit and our premium track bar. Now, with the steering out of the way, we got plenty of room to replace that track bar because we saw that OEM unit was a little worse for wear down at the joint here on the axle. Now, we did put our premium track bar in here, which has a flex joint at both ends, which is going to be our most heavy-duty, most rigid setup to help us mitigate Death Wobble. Come on in here. I'm going to show you all these shiny, pretty new parts here. We've gone ahead and installed our 1-ton chromoly tie rod, our 1-ton drag link, and the premium track bar. With all these parts, we've got high hopes that we're not going to see Death Wobble again, but time to do a test drive and verify. So we're on our test drive, and this is actually our second test drive. The first one, we had everything put together as normal, and it was great. Beautiful, smooth, stable, no Death Wobble, feeling great. Now, part of the customer's condition, which we are hearing from the dealership constantly, is steering stabilizer. This one's had 2, maybe 3 of them replaced already. So we took a second test drive without the steering stabilizer, and no death wobble. Everything that we've done, that whole checklist, checking our tires, replacing known bad parts, setting the alignment, everything that we did has taken care of death wobble. It's a good day. Upon our return from the test drive, we wanted to reiterate that we did 2 test drives here. We did one with the steering stabilizer and one without the steering stabilizer. Now, we wanted to do that because that seems to be OE's solution for these, so much so that the dealership is running out of them. So we wanted to remove it for a test drive, of course, in a very controlled environment, just to eliminate it from the equation and verify that everything else we did has truly taken care of the death wobble. All right, as you saw from the test drive, we don't have death wobble anymore. We went through that entire list. We did our due diligence. We checked all the boxes and found a lot of contributing factors. And it's very important to remember that all of those factors contributed. There was no singular cause here. If you remember at the beginning, we did kind of start with the no cost things, the things that we can just adjust on our own. And that did help. That did improve the condition a little bit, lessen the severity just a little bit, but it was still very present. So we knew we needed to move on to the things that cost a little bit of money, like replacing parts. But once we got our 1-ton steering in there, our premium track bar, got all that dialed in, alignments dialed, everything is the way it needed to be per the sheet. It's gone. It's running smooth, no death wobble. It's stable. I have to imagine it felt better than when it was brand new off the lot. Now, that sheet that we used, you can find in our FAQ section. That's frequently asked questions. It's actually the very first one. What do I do about death wobble? The words death wobble is a link to that PDF. All the parts that we installed, the tie rod, the drag link, the track bar, some of those pieces can be bought as a kit. They can all be purchased individually, a la carte, and that's on our website, ironrockoffroad.com. Make sure you guys are following us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and of course, YouTube.